What's up, YouTube? Hope you're doing well. Crypto Jack here. Hey, in today's video, we're bringing you the highlights of a really nice interview that I had with Mark KARPELES, the ex-CEO of Mt. Gox. Yikes, right? Crazy, infamous guy. Lots of good information. One of the things he brought up had to do with Japan, how they focus on custodying assets as a result of the Mt. Gox situation. That, along with several other things, were very interesting and they were pertinent to what's going on with FTX today. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it. And last thing is, catch me on the live stream. I'm sorry that there was a bit of a delay in this video with getting this one out. We've had some technical difficulties. Hopefully that's behind us. All right, without further ado, enjoy the video. Mark, we are live. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for being here. Um, so a little background on me real quick, Mark. I typically do technical analysis and that's it. So I'm like the charts nerd. I look at the candlesticks and like that's kind of it. But I have a passion for this whole industry, the whole background. In fact, one of my favorite books, I don't know if you had this or not, but it's called Digital Gold. And it's a pretty good book. Who wrote this? With Nathaniel Popper. Anyway, he had a lot of good information on this, and this is really where I got some of the background on you, more than just what the headline showed, and I just found it fascinating. So anyway, why don't you give us a quick little intro on yourself, whatever you want to say, and then we'll kind of kick things off.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Mark KARPELES. I'm best known for the failed MT GOX exchange, which is actually an exchange that was started in 2010. I took over in 2011. Back in the time, Bitcoin was something around $1. Mt. Gox was the only exchange existing in the whole market for quite some time. And at the end of Mt. Gox, actually, we still had like 70% of the market. So Mt. Gox filed for bankruptcy back in 2014, in end of February. I did actually a lot more than just running Mt. Gox, because at the very beginning, when Bitcoin was still used only by a few hundred people on the whole community, I was probably one of the first companies to accept Bitcoin payments by implementing my own payment methods using the very old Bitcoin client. And I also started working on a new Bitcoin client at some point because I thought the existing one was a little bit too complex, and having a different code base would help making things more clear.
Okay.
So more than actually doing business, initially I'm an engineer, so I work on developing software and doing things like that. But I did learn a lot running my own businesses, and when I started working on Mt. Gox, I also found out that running an exchange is a lot of more work than I was expecting at the very beginning, especially at the time Bitcoin was not fairly well known. So we had a lot of issues with banks, regulators, first explaining what Bitcoin is and what it isn't, and then explaining why Bitcoin is not the enemy and so on.
Sure.
So
Okay.
yeah.
One thing that I think a lot of people miss, and I didn't know this until recently, was that you were a founding member of the Bitcoin Foundation. I didn't know that. So is that correct? Was that reported correctly?
Yes, it's correct. Actually, there were a lot of talks of creating a Bitcoin Foundation for a while. We had some people wanted to do it at the like 2011 timeframe, but they had some other issues and kind of dropped out of the picture. Back in the time, Mt. Gox actually did register the Bitcoin Foundation domains, which we donated when the Bitcoin Foundation was finally created. But yeah, we were part of the very initial Bitcoin Foundation.
That's fascinating. Okay, and chat, just let me, if you guys, I know, so Mark, I have a lot of new kind of first cycle listeners, watchers. And so let me give them a quick background here. Mt. Gox was in the early days, this was what, it's got it coming up, we're 10 years now, 10 years ago. How many years ago now?
I
So
think 10, 12 years ago.
Golly, that's crazy. So back then, just about all transactions for Bitcoin, buying and selling, marketplace activity took place on Mt. Gox. Now, Mt. Gox was originally founded by what was his name, Jed McCaleb of XRP, if memory serves, right? And the name Mt. Gox, if I remember right, it was Magic the Gathering online exchange, which what that was kind of the founding, the GOX. That's where the acronym came from. And then this was subsequently sold to Mark. Mark took over, and then unfortunately, there was one of the largest hacks. I think still to this day in Bitcoin terms, the largest hack in Bitcoin history. And I had to give myself a little refresher, Mark. But if I remember correctly, it was something like there was eight, what was it, 850,000 Bitcoin, something like that, taken, but then 200 clawed back, 200,000 clawed back later on. So really, effectively, a net of 650,000 still in the wild somewhere. Is that correct?
Yep. More than cloud back, actually, it was in a special kind of cold wallet that was created like at the very beginning of Mongox, actually.
Okay.
So they were still stored on cold wallets.
Right, and the too long didn't read on all that is there's all these questions of who had security control. Did Jed still have some? Was Mark involved? There's all this. There's all these headline kind of conspiracy theory items. But one thing I will say about Mark is Mark has been very adamant about trying to make things up for the people who are hurt. In fact, if memory serves, originally the way the bankruptcy proceedings for the remaining 200,000 Bitcoin that were returned, originally those Bitcoins were worth much more than in dollar values and fiat value than at the time the hack occurred. And if they sold everything, it would net you something like $2 billion at the time. I think when all this discussion was going on. Now that was a year or two ago now. So what's the latest on that? Has any of that been adjusted? Is that still the case now? What's the latest?
Yeah, actually, it was a little bit longer than that, since it was
Hmm.
about 4 to 5 years ago.
Okay.
So Mongo initially filed for what we call in Japan civil rehabilitation, which is equivalent to the US Chapter 11, which FTX filed actually. And under customer pressure, the civil rehabilitation was moved to regular bankruptcy by the court. So we went from Chapter 11 to Chapter 7, which involved just liquidating everything and selling everything, which I guess at the time made sense. But as the price of Bitcoin grew, the assets Mongox held, which included 200,000 Bitcoins, became more valuable than the liabilities, which were about $500 million. And this meant typically in case of regular bankruptcy, whatever remains after the distribution of the assets is distributed to the shareholders, which would have included me.
Right.
So I couldn't really change this on my own. So I needed creators to know about this. So I made sure, and I actually played a little bit the devil by showing that as things were going, I was about to get $1 billion, which was actually increasing over time as the price grew.
Hmm.
And this indeed caused creators to move forward with this. I also looked on how we could process this, and the best solution that was found in the end is to go back into civil rehabilitation. So basically going back under Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which allows distributing the assets of the company not as cash, but as Bitcoin directly, which would mean that instead of seeing Bitcoins as an asset of the company that is converted to Japanese yen, we see it as something that needs to be given back as Bitcoins, and ensures that the company is not having too much assets that would need to be distributed to shareholders, instead distributing everything to creators.
Okay.
So of course, there are things that needed to be done for this to go through. One of the things that the trustee did was to sell about 50,000 Bitcoins to secure the cash amount of the original bankruptcy. So Mongox actually sold about $50,000, 50,000 Bitcoins at around $16,000 a Bitcoin, and secured about $600 million in order to be able to cover the bankruptcy creators at least as much as the bankruptcy would have allowed.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the questions that I actually had kind of leading into this is why is all the proceedings and everything taking place in Japan? Like why was there some document? Is that where the headquarters of the company was, or why was that?
Yes, actually, Mongox initially wasn't a company. So when I took over, I created a company for Mongox in Japan because that's where I was.
Okay.
Uh, so basically, took over Mongox in 2011 in March with my own company, which was called Tiban, which was already in Japan, and I created a subsidiary called Mongox later this year.
Okay, got it. Um, Something else I didn't know till I was doing a little bit of homework was that during Ross Ulbright's proceedings for the infamous Silk Road, um, for that marketplace, that he actually accused you of being the Dread Pirate Roberts. I had not heard that before, but that all it took for you was to say no, I'm not, and it looked like life went on. And there wasn't much more to it. So, what's the latest on Mount Gox? Like, where are things? Because I saw on the news not too long ago, um, and you could fill this in much better than I can, obviously, but that the courts had sent out some sort of questionnaire of sorts to anyone who was involved and said, "How would you like to get this back? Would you like it in fiat currency? Would you like it in crypto? How would you like it?" But this has got to be a year or more ago at this point. So, what is the latest?
Yeah, actually, it's not that long ago because it was last year. No, actually, it was this year. Sorry, we're not yet in
Oh,
2022.
it was in
But
2022.
yeah, 2022, the
Okay.
trustee asked everyone not only how they want their money back, but also to provide their bank account or transfer information.
Mm.
Like if they wanted to get Bitcoin, they would need to get an account with an approved exchange. So basically, the trustee starting this process this year, and there's actually a deadline of January 10 next year on this.
And
So
so
all creditors need to provide this information so that they can get paid, which means also that the payment is very close because once the trustee gets all the information, the next step is actually to perform payments. There might be some checks and so on going with that. But at the same time, getting all this information means the payment need to happen soon because if not, the information will be outdated and useless.
okay, so the deadline for January, is that just the deadline for people to respond, or are they going to actually take action at that point?
That's the deadline for the response, actually.
Okay.
And I'm guessing that many people didn't respond. The trustee may decide to extend the deadline. But if
Oh.
most people have responded, the trustee should be able to move forward with the next steps.
Okay, is there any indication on what those next steps might be? I'm sure many people want to know.
Uh, so right now, actually, there's something that's called I don't remember the exact term in English, but basically it's an intermediate payment, which people can get within a specific amount uh, to
It's
get
like a
some money.
reduced amount, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
there's
right.
actually the cap of this. So for many creators, it could be the full amount, but for very large creators, it will be virtually nothing. But it means that people get back some money sooner. That allows also some people to just leave the bankruptcy, uh, and means that people don't have to wait for the final part of this, which includes some lawsuits and so on. There might still be some new lawsuits coming on if creators are not happy about something or whatever that could delay the final payment. But as we are right now, I think we did go through all of the largest issues. Most of the deadlines to file objections anyway are long past. So we are very close to doing the actual distribution.
Okay. And then kind of the last question I guess I have on the Mount Gox side of things is, I know there was people who they were selling their interest in their claim, I guess I should say, for Mount Gox, and they were selling them. This was going on for years on pennies on the dollar. What's the latest on that? Are those being respected? Is the bankruptcy court saying no, no, we're only going to deal with the original people? How does that work?
No, actually, there's a legal process to transfer your claim to someone else.
Hmm.
And it's very common in bankruptcies for funds and companies to buy claims from creditors who cannot wait. Depending on the timing, actually, some of the claims were sold quite high because Bitcoin was much higher than it is today. So I'm not sure exactly, and I'm guessing that actually the companies that bought those claims already dealt with the Bitcoin value using future contracts and other things like that.
Mm.
So they're not actually making any kind of loss, but some of the creators who sold at the right timing might actually be getting a profit on this, I think.
Okay, yeah, it's funny to think about. Oh, I
Yeah.
lied. One more question on this. What is there? Did anything come of the Brock Pierce stuff? I know that he was in the news trying to kind of assert some kind of claim with respect to Mount Gox, but whatever came of that?
Yeah, actually, what he wanted to do is to take Mongox out of bankruptcy, take the assets of Mongox, like all the bitcoins, as kind of a way to back some kind of new currency he would create and give to creators. Some kind of something that would be similar actually to the FTT token, but with a partial backing of bitcoins. And I think he wanted to do this in a way to, you know, one side creators get something back, which is not what they had initially, but might have some value. And at the same time, broke players get access to 150,000 to 200,000 bitcoins.
Mm, okay.
So that didn't sound like a good idea at all.
No.
I actually met him, and when I met him, he told me something, and that he wrote something completely different in the news and to reporters. So I did find that uh, he was not trustworthy far
Mm.
as I could see. So I thought it would be better to not have him involved. And we had a small fight on Twitter about this, and it ended fairly quickly.
Okay, and that was the end of it. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, he didn't try to get in touch anymore after that, at least as far as I know.
Okay. So I guess before, obviously, we're gonna get into the SBF and all that kind of stuff, the FTX. But while we're on the
Yeah.
topic of Mount Gox, do you want to talk about the ungoxed side of things?
Yes, of course. So what happened with Mongox actually affected the cryptocurrency industry quite a lot, mostly because Mongox at the time was the largest exchange out there. We handled 70% of the trade volume. And I've always been thinking of ways that I could make sure that something like that wouldn't happen again. So I've actually thought at some point creating a new exchange might be an option, like working with people who wanted to create an exchange and setting up a new kind of standards on the kind of security exchanges should be following. So basically leading by example. The problem is creating an exchange nowadays is much more expensive. And of course, me being involved in an exchange might be an issue for some people, and that
Yeah,
be
probably.
kind of an issue. And the second idea I had was to go with creating a sort of agency that would rate exchanges, which is what Ungox is. So basically looking at the way each exchange runs, and basically we'd be looking both on the technical side, so the way the security is set up, how it's interacting with the blockchain and so on, and also at the legal side, including how is the company formed, what kind of subsidiaries exist, is it properly transparent, what kind of people are involved with the exchange. Like, do you just have people that are good at marketing, or do you have actually people good at security and so on? And we'd be also looking at the legal context, which is basically, is the election running in a country that's in a good kind of mood for cryptocurrencies, or is there a risk of everything being banned? So just
Sure.
having this number of uh, parameters which would need to be analyzed for every exchanges, but not only exchanges. I also thought about doing this for DAO, cryptos, and so on. So the idea is to cover as broadly as possible every single kind of project people can put money in. Of course, we'll end with a rating that's very simple from A to F, which means that basically if you want to use an exchange, if you see it has a very bad rating, you may decide still to use it because you know you can make money out of it if it goes well, but just not put the same kind of money that you would put if you knew that everything was safe.
Right.
We also have a specific rating, which is just scam for exchanges that's actually not really exchanges, but just a scam,
Sure.
like kind of you get back 1% a day on your deposit and stuff like this, which clearly uh, are just trying to get money from people.
Right.
And the other thing we have, of course, is bankrupt because MT GOX is bankrupt, and it's going to be a lot of exchanges that are showing as bankrupt, I believe, following FTX.
The chat says that your bottom rating should be the FTX rating. That should be like your, your worst the worst number you can get. Well, okay, so speaking of FTX, let's go ahead and pivot into FTX. What are your thoughts on all this? I guess I'll let you kind of guide the conversation. How do you want to start?
Yeah, actually, there's quite a lot of things to be said about FTX because, of course, there are some parts that were visible before. Uh, as I working on launching Mongo, Ngox, I did look into FTX and I did try to look into it. I saw there were quite a lot of companies involved. Like in Japan alone, you have 4 companies. I thought it would take a lot of time to get everything together, so I just put someone else to look at this and moved on more straightforward exchanges. But typically, when you have some very complex structure for an exchange, it already starts to look not so great. So that's one reason. That's one parameter I would have used, and I did use actually to tell some people to not use FTX because if you have any kind of issue or something going wrong, typically you don't access uh, your funds back immediately. There's a very large structure, which means that in case of a bankruptcy like we're right now, we have a lot of involved entities, which means it takes longer. Because all of these entities are in different countries, actually,
Mm,
it's very well that whatever, like right now, you have a bankruptcy filing done in the US for companies in Europe, in Japan, or in so many countries, and it's very likely not going to work because the US court doesn't have the right jurisdiction. That means that whatever assets are in those companies is not actually protected by the bankruptcy proceeding.
oh gosh. So I just looked it
So
up because I couldn't remember, but there's 134 individual like named entities, and then God knows how
yes,
many they've touched or have some kind of affiliation with. So yeah, you're right. There's a ton of companies here, and I did not know that they were formed in different countries. That's news to me. For some reason, I thought they were all spun up in exactly the same spot. So you've already taught me something interesting.
yeah, actually, I did publish a list of all those companies, and I from the bankruptcy document. And for those I had more information on, I did put some more information. Like for the companies in Japan, I actually have access to the corporate information, like who formed it and so on. Um, I also did look up from the document in bankruptcy, which explains which company owns which. So you have a kind of a arborescence you can build from this. It turns out that it's not that complex in that there's only like 3 large owners that owns all those companies,
Interesting.
except for smaller things. But it's very complex and it's way more complex than it needs to be. Like, for example, you have a company in Vietnam that is owned by the company in Japan, that is owned by the company in, I'm not sure if it's the US or Bahamas. Uh, but yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
What about the text messages with SBF? Have you been or the DMs? I guess have you seen those? It's between a reporter.
Yeah,
Oh,
this, that's from less than 24 hours ago, but I did read that right before this interview. So
did you throw up
that's,
reading it? Gosh,
it's not good at all. I don't know how this guy can be at the same time on Twitter saying like, yes, we can launch, we can resume FTX because we kind of had some assets. Even if you look just at the leaked balance sheet, one thing that really ticked me on this balance sheet is actually you have liabilities for Bitcoins, but you don't have any assets for Bitcoins, which is weird to say the least. So either
hmm,
the balance sheet is completely incomplete, because yeah, I see you have 1.4 billion liabilities denominated in Bitcoin, but there's not a single asset, liquid or not, that matches even close to this. There's no Bitcoin there.
interesting.
typically for a company that has a liabilities in Bitcoin, so I assume it's customer deposits, and also it could be the bridge for the Solana wrapped Bitcoins. Um, if you have 1.4 billion of Bitcoins, I mean, in liabilities, you should have at least some of that in assets.
Yeah, absolutely. You would be bragging about all the Bitcoin you have and leaning on it and inflating your balance sheet even more, your asset. Not inflating in the illegal sense, but inflating as if you're it's like you filling out a financial statement and owning a house but not putting the house on your financial statement. It makes no sense. Why would you not do that?
At the very least, you should have like assets matching the liabilities. So you have
Right.
1.4 billions worth of liabilities in Bitcoin. You could have 1.4 billions worth of assets in Bitcoin. So it just nullifies each other. And you don't take any risk from Bitcoin going up or down. So either FTX was assuming that Bitcoin will continue going down and already sold everything, or I'm not sure. The other thing I noticed on this balance sheet is that FTX actually has no uh, US dollar balance that decreased between the 1 week before and the time this balance sheet was made, despite having $5 billion of withdrawals and still having like $5 billion of USD liabilities.
Interesting.
So one thing that could happen is, like, for example, if FTX has been selling FTT tokens or something like that in real time to cover those liabilities. I'm not sure exactly because the $5 billion in withdrawals that everyone is talking about, we don't know if it's actually $5 billion or if it's $5 billion worth of other cryptos.
Right. Now, chat did make an interesting observation. Trex, I see you. They said perhaps they loaned everything to Alameda, and then the asset would be on Alameda's balance sheet while they kept the liability. That they were expecting it back. So basically, like
Yeah, I
loaning
mean,
it out.
typically on the balance sheet, even if you hold your Bitcoins, for example, with another company, you still have an asset, which is the fact that this company owes you whatever you loan to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
So
There's something squirrely going on there. Maybe they showed it. Maybe there was an exchange of like illiquid tokens in exchange for Bitcoin, and that's how they reconciled it. Something like that. But here's the question I have for you, especially because you've sat in this driver's seat, of running an exchange. Did you ever have the idea of an exchange token? Did this ever come up? Did this ever cross your mind?
I mean, back in the time where Mongox ran, we didn't have that many tokens that we have today. So we did think it could be interesting at some point to create a kind of token that could be used between exchanges. That could be, for example, pegged against the Japanese yen. Because there was a way to do this. Actually, there's still a way to do this in the Japanese law using part of the Payments Act that allows to issue yen-denominated points
Hmm.
as a instrument. But basically, it was quite complex to do. And by the time we wanted to do that, we already had so many issues to deal with. It was put on a second priority. So
Yeah, right. That was the back of the list. Um, well, okay. Well, here's another kind of obvious question. What about leveraging up your customers' deposits and getting massive loans on their on the customers' deposits? Now, I'm sure even if you were tempted by it, I'm sure that's not something you were jumping on. But with FTX, I mean, that's what they did. It's 100% what they did.
yeah, actually, when I ran Mangox, I did choose to run this into kind of, I mean, Japan is not very friendly to foreign investors or foreign business executive, because when you go to a bank or when you try to even raise money in Japan, it's very difficult as a foreigner, even impossible in many cases. So when I was running Mongox, I didn't expect to be able to get loans from anyone or anything. And as Bitcoin started to be more known, we started to have US investors coming to us and asking if they could invest into Mongox,
Mm.
which we started to take into consideration. But considering the issues we had, both legally and with past Mongox had from Jed's management. I wanted to get everything cleared up before we accepted any money.
Yeah, smart. I'm starting to come around to this idea that this is just part of the cycle. That this is part of each the bull run cycle. And I and a lot of the chat are big believers in how the halving kind of kicks off a bull run. So you have your big your bull run, your bear market, your sideways, and then the next halving, and it's like the whole cycle repeats itself. But just
Yeah,
like
and
you had,
actually, it's true.
yeah,
Yeah, you have this kind of 4 year cycle. You see, we had Mongox 8 years ago. 4 years ago, actually, there was CoinCheck in Japan, which was not Bitcoin, but it was still a very large hack.
yeah.
Uh, mm, in terms of uh, cash value, it was higher than Mongox, but it was not in Bitcoin, so still slightly different. But still, we see every 4 years a very large thing. So some people actually contacted me and told me like, so yeah, every 4 years we're getting
That's crazy.
basically.
What do you do you find yourself checking the on-chain analytics and looking at the hacked Mount Gox Bitcoin, seeing if it moved, kind of keeping up with it?
Yeah, I'm looking at what I can look. So we know about some of the bitcoins that were stolen from Mongols very early, like the 1FX, 80,000 bitcoins. And there's some of the bitcoins we can track on the blockchain from the later theft, but because the hacker was arrested and right now he's in US custody, I'm hoping we get see a trial start there so we can get more information because everything the US holds right now on this guy is still under wraps basically. So
Mm.
until the trial actually starts, the evidence won't come to light from most of this part.
Okay, so what happens with all the legal proceedings if, say, tomorrow you wake up and the U.S. says, "Hey, we got your 650,000 Bitcoin back. Here you go," and they hand it to you? Like, what happens? What's the process?
Yeah, I mean, there's a process for this, and they wouldn't hand it to me personally. They would hand it to the trustee dealing
Right.
with the bankruptcy. There's two possibilities. One possibility is the bankruptcy is still in progress, in which case the trustee would have to add this to the assets and
Uh,
distribute it pro rata to every single creditors, which would be fairly simple. And the second option is if it happens like years from now and the bankruptcy is already complete, what the court would do is it can reassign a trustee to deal with those new assets and redo a distribution based on the initial rules, which would probably take, I guessing, 2 3 years to get back in contact with everyone and gather information for everyone on how to give them their assets.
yeah. Or given their speed on this last one, maybe 10 years. Who knows? Who knows? So okay,
Yeah.
so back to SBF and FTX and everything. Did and again coming back to the fact that you literally ran an exchange. You're one of the very select 1% of the 1% who've actually done this. Was there anything kind of viewing this from the outside in that made you just go, huh, that doesn't look right, or that seems weird?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look too much into FTX until the bankruptcy because when I started looking into it, I pulled on a company and there were like 3 companies coming from it, and I tried to pulling on it more. And at around 10 companies, I just thought, okay, it's going to take some time, so I'm going to do this after.
Right.
And yeah, knowing now that there were more than 100 companies, it would have taken a lot of time just not to, just
Yeah.
putting on stuff.
Well, you had made a comment. I think it was before we started the stream about like the guaranteed returns, and this was something that a lot of the quote Bitcoin maxis. I'm gonna use that term loosely, but a lot of them were pointing at that like, that looks like bait. That looks like a trap of sorts. But what did you think of that part of it?
I mean, for me, an exchange or even a company offering guaranteed
Mm-hmm.
returns on any kind of deposit is definitely a red flag. The first company I saw doing that is called Bitconica, which is one of the very first exchange to actually go into bankruptcy and getting hacked after going.
Gotcha.
But basically, offering return on deposits means like you actually need people to deposit and keep money with you. So any kind of returns, or you lock the customer deposit a given amount of time to give them some return or something like that, basically means those are no longer deposits, but those are basically loans or investments, and you're actually using this for something. Um, it might be, it might make sense in some case, but most of the time, crypto loans and things like that tend to be very high risk. So I believe people need to know about this kind of risks. And for Bitcoinica, it was like there's no risk you get. I don't remember what was the amount, but
Yeah,
there was some amount. And
risk free. Anytime someone uses risk free, like you
yeah,
need your
I
radar needs to
find
go.
risk-free not risk free. You know, it's never going to be risk free.
Right. Never, ever. That doesn't exist. Yeah. Well, and just
I
like we're
mean, it
seeing
was
that.
really,
Go
yeah,
ahead. I'm sorry. You go ahead.
if it was really risk free, you wouldn't need to get money from outside for it.
Right.
Just loans or whatever, and you get a higher amount than actual loan, so just pay it for it with that. Or I mean, there's so many ways you can do this
Right. Right.
if
Exactly.
it's really.
Yeah, yeah. I think Alameda, if I remember right, their initial pitch deck. This was like day one of the formation of Alameda. It was something like quote guaranteed returns of 15% annually, guaranteed. Um,
Yeah, which is a very big red flag.
right, right. And what blows me away with FTX and Sam and everything is they had every cheat code available to them. They had the market maker under their thumb. You know, they had all the shit coins. They had their own exchange coin. They leveraged it up. I mean, they did everything they possibly could, you know, illegally or immorally or a combination of both, and they still failed. Like that baffles me. I I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, they did play something that ended being very big, and I think they didn't properly. I mean, initially when they set up this, they didn't expect things to grow that big, I would say. And that's something that happens a lot in crypto is when you build something, it grows much faster than you can ever imagine. And for FTX, you start with a process, okay, we can make money this way. Turns out a lot of people will give you money if you tell them you have a guaranteed return of 15%. So you end up with higher and higher numbers, and then you need to get more people on board so you can pay the people you promised to pay. And it just grow very. I mean, it starts accelerating very quickly, and at some point it just pops. I mean, it's
Right.
what happened with
Yeah.
any kind of this kind of schemes where you make promise to people that cannot be actually kept.
No, it's all the whole thing is just fascinating. Um, you know, one of the things that I kind of noticed, or in at the end of it all, like in retrospect, is how everyone kind of knew. And credit, I'm going to give credit to Crypto Cred, who does a lot of analysis and stuff. But these are basically this is his talking point, and I really like it. He said everyone knew Alameda and FTX was cheating. They all knew there was the market maker in bed with them. This was kind of the open secret. He said so. What's really diabolical is it's like they hid a scam behind the scam. Everyone knew that they were kind of scamming a little bit with this relationship, but they kind of thought that's where it ended. But really, that no one expected the customer fund side of it, you know, on the back end. And apparently, this is very common. This is what I've learned that there's a good con man will have basically a scam behind a scam. So I don't know. I don't know if you had thought of it that way before.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I didn't have much time to look into FTX before the bankruptcy because it was just too large to complete. So, of course, looking afterward and looking at all the information that comes out, it seems very obviously a scam. And I mean, anyone that offering you guaranteed return on something as uh, non-stable as cryptocurrencies, you need to. I mean, you know, it's going to be there's something more behind it. Um, I guess some people, even knowing it would be a scam, would be happy to just put money in it, knowing that they probably believe they'll be able to get out in time before the end
Yeah,
of the game.
yeah, I
But
agree with
many
that.
people are victims in this because they wanted to buy or sell crypto or do things that completely unrelated and ended being caught in this whole FTX story.
Yeah. In fact, in chat's making a good point. If they could have found more money, the House of Cards would have continued. Or if I
Yeah,
guess if CZ hadn't have pressured them with the sales. Um, so I
yeah,
guess we're kind of lucky in a way that everything failed and we can burn away the rot and then maybe build something better on top of it. But
yeah. And that's also one thing I see. Like, if you look at the SBF's recent tweets, which he has been posting not today, but like yesterday, I mean, some hours ago, where he says, like, we are still liquid, we could do this again. Basically, he's asking people to just close your eyes, don't look at anything. I'm going to shuffle around the balance sheet, and we're going to be running again like before. Just give us more money. That just feels like trying to resume this kind of uh, I mean, for me, it really looks, and that's my personal opinion looking at this, but it's kind of basically a Ponzi scheme where you have people paying for earlier people. And of course, if everyone forgets about everything that's come out and they get more cash, it will look like it's working again for some time. But it's not a solution on dealing with this.
yeah, no, this is ridiculous. His final tweet about 4 hours ago was, anyway, none of this matters. This was tweet 32 in a whole series. What matters is I'm doing the best I can and doing everything I can for FTX's customers. It's like he's delusional. I,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, based also on the information that's come out recently, it looks like he's been taking some stimulants and stuff like this. I don't know if it's affecting his ability to think about it because I can't see no way being in this situation. I mean, I've been in this kind of situation. And when you run an exchange and you go bankrupt, people will send you death threats. You won't be able to walk outside without having journalists on your back. I mean, it's clearly a very difficult kind of time. It's not the kind of time you choose to just post a tweet every 3 hours with one letter at a time or doing things like that. So I don't know exactly what kind of mindset he is right now, but I just cannot imagine how he gets in this mindset of telling people, yeah, let's do that again. Or
yeah, it makes
I just kind of, yeah, it makes no sense to me.
no sense. What do you think happens to Sam? You think he goes to jail? You think he walks free? What do you think?
Well, given the size of this, and it depends if he managed to get people to forgive him, I might work in his favor. Uh, because at the end, what's really important is how many people are actually trying to uh, point a finger at you. And when I was there, every single newspaper, everyone was just pointing at me and saying, he's a bad guy, let's get him. I don't understand how he gets positive or even kind of neutral coverage from news
Yeah, yeah,
events.
yeah. No, that's an excellent point. You've been on the receiving end of this, just like him, and I don't think you had the same favorable coverage. Like, what was the New York Times piece, the little puff piece, where they said they're
Yeah,
like, "Oh, he's resting. He's finally getting the rest he deserves." And you didn't get stuff like that. Are you kidding me? What?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that feels a little bit unfair from my point of view.
No, that's a good point though. That's funny. Um,
So yeah, I'm guessing like based on how it goes, he might be able to get away with some of this. But I mean, I don't see him getting really away unless he runs away into a more favorable, like non. I mean, even if he goes in other country, he's likely going to have some victims over there too, but he might be able to pay them a bit better. But right now, to me, it looks like he's buying public opinion using pieces that are likely not paid directly, but maybe paid through people that introduce him to the right writer that are in the better mindset to do these interviews than someone else. Um, to me, it looks like a lot of this is being spent on money that should be back into FTX.
yeah. There's been a lot of comments about potentially clawing back or pulling back some of the donations he's made, some of the marketing things he's done. And perhaps that plays into, why there's been this positive coverage, because the recipients of that are very powerful, perhaps, and they don't want to lose that $100 million, for example.
Yeah. Plus, clawing back money might be difficult, but one thing that should probably be done is to have him personally enter bankruptcy too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. No, I'm with you all day on that.
Yeah, I do believe he's still spending a lot to get this kind of coverage. Like, it's not only based on past donations, but on active ability to be able to pay. Because I can tell you, like, journals or even these kind of pieces likely are not only based on past donations, but future potential donations or money actually moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's say he either goes to jail or he doesn't, and we're 4 years down the road, right? We're in the next
Hmm.
hype cycle. People have the memories of squirrels; they kind of move on. Based on your own personal experience, what do you think Sam is doing 4 years from now? You think he's been hired by somebody? Do you think he tries to do it again? What do you think he's gonna do?
Well, 4 years from now is likely going to be still under a lot of lawsuits. I don't know. I don't think he would be free unless he ran to another country. So either he completely run away, and there's no way to access him either on the civil or criminal side, or he is under criminal, either still under um, sorry,
Investigation?
no, not investigation, but going on through a trial, or is in jail, likely.
Mm, yeah.
Very likely he would be also under bankruptcy with his assets being liquidated and distributed back, uh, possibly directly to the FTX bankruptcy that would then distribute this to creators.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. 4 years is probably not long enough for the one of the largest financial crimes in all of history. I heard somebody say, and I agree with it, that it was like um, Lehman Brothers mixed with, you know, Enron, and then with a couple other things mixed together. It was like a combination of the worst things, and then here he is meme joking on Twitter. The one letter tweets and yeah.
Yeah.
I
One letter of it is, I mean, for me, it looks like he was just trolling and making fun of people and basically look, I'm still have the power to make you listen to me. I think he liked it a lot that everyone was responding to it and so on.
I think so too. I think he's a little bit of a sociopath or narcissist or something, because he was kind of getting off on that. And even in his direct messages that got leaked, he was saying things like, "Yeah, I cut corners, and I guess I'm sorry people lost, but everyone likes a winner." He had this kind of attitude of like, "Well, as long as I win, it doesn't matter what I do." And yeah, people get hurt, but who cares? I don't know. It was ugly. Um,
Yeah.
so anything else on the SBF and FTX front? Anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to?
I think at this point, we covered most of it. I mean, there's basically no, I mean, I still looking at his balance sheet and uh, I cannot fathom how he was able, I mean, how this company was running until now. Um, we have this story of a 5 billion total withdrawals on a Sunday, while at the same time he says that the company typically transfers about $4 billion a day. So it's not that much higher. So I don't know how it was an issue. But also something I see is that the assets didn't, I mean, the liquid asset didn't move at all following this high demand, which really makes no sense in terms of accounting. So I do think there's a lot more than what is on this balance sheet. Maybe hidden assets or something like that that is trying to hide from the bankruptcy. I don't know. But I do believe that a lot of this will come up in the coming, I don't know if it's going to be weeks or months, as things get more light more sunlight.
Yeah, I'm with
So
you.
there's a lot of unknowns that are going to be clarified there. And there's probably also going to be more companies that had exposure to FTX that are going to be having trouble, like we saw. Sorry, I forgot the name of that one.
What the one that happened today, Genesis?
Yes, Genesis.
Yeah. Right. And then that whole sequence was crazy, Chad. If you're not familiar with this, Genesis was it was a lending platform, if memory serves, and it was connected to Gemini. And Gemini put out some sort of tweet like, "No, don't worry about us, we're good." And the next thing you know, the whole platform went down. So everything everything went offline for like 10 minutes or something today, and people were freaking out. They thought this was it um, for Gemini. But then they came back up and they're like, "Hey, it was our service provider. Don't worry, we're fine." Um, so I don't really know. I don't know what we're gonna wake up to tomorrow. It seems there was something new every day.
Yeah. Oh, and also something else I wanted to address is that SBF has been in the DMs that were published, saying that regulators are not going to help in any way and so on. But actually, it happens that FTX Japan is under the Japanese regulations, which means that it had to segregate funds between itself and Japanese customers, which also, as things stand today, looks like Japanese customers that were dealing with FTX Japan only are going to get back most, if not everything they had there.
Mm.
So actually, Japan created its regulation after the MT GOX crash. They made it in a way to make sure this kind of thing shouldn't happen again. And of course, it works only if the company follows the rules. Regulators will check randomly the company, and they're going very strongly on making sure everything happens right. Uh, so as things stand today, it looks like FTX Japan was actually run properly compared to FTX International.
So you're saying thanks to you and your hard work years before.
I wouldn't go with hard work. I mean, it was hard, but I didn't really aim for this at the. I mean, I wanted to run a business that works, and I definitely didn't want things to go like they went.
Right.
But it's like a silver lining is that the way things went in Japan caused the regulators to create regulations for crypto exchanges that FTX had to follow in Japan, and which result in Japanese customers being uh, possibly better protected than international customers or US customers.
Okay, so question on that. We heard, I guess, from FTX. Okay, so take it with a grain of salt. This was the conversation early on. FTX and Sam put out different tweets saying, "All right, don't worry, FTX USA people, everything's fine. There's no commingling of funds. Everything's good." And then a few days later, maybe a week later, they're like, "Oh crap! Actually, there were. My bad." Is there some kind of worry about that for the FTX Japan side, or do you know definitively that there was like a wall between the funds?
So, of course, there's a worry about this, but the main difference is that in Japan, the regulators have a much stronger way of enforcing that than in the US, for example.
Hmm.
And they will, every few months, come in the office and run random checks to make sure everything is in check.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, makes sense. Um.
So, yeah, the main thing I'm worried about is the crypto side of things, because I'm guessing Japanese customers should have coins and stuff like this, and I don't see anything on the assets. So I don't know if it's completely segregated and the assets are just not in the balance sheet,
Mhm.
or if it's something else. But I guess we'll know when the times come. But so far, uh, as it looks like Japanese customers dealing with FTX Japan might be in a better state than people in most other places.
Oof. Oof. And the Americans don't like that. They're so proud of their regulation and their little geofenced wall. They're gonna start whipping up new bills now after that if that's the case.
Definitely.
Golly. Um. Okay, so question on Bitcoin. Obviously, this stuff is bad. Everything's kind of going down. You know, you see a lot of there's some as different entities are liquidated or forced into bankruptcy, they're selling their crypto along the way. There's this daisy chain effect. Um, so two-part question following that. One, how low do you think Bitcoin gets, or has it already bottomed? Just the price dollar of it. And number two, how long do you think we stay in these lows or have a bear market? What do you think?
Uh, to be quite honest, I usually try to avoid making any kind of prediction of Bitcoin price because there's so many factors that can go in that. But right now, I think that the FTX bankruptcy is already part of the Bitcoin price because these kind of moments happen very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm worried is what is going to go down with FTX. There might still be some things we don't know about yet. So if another large exchange goes down too, that's more involved in Bitcoin, that might be causing the price to go down lower. Um, on the other one, it's if we see that everyone is safe, like for example, Binance planning to do audit check based on a new protocol that Vitaly Buttering is working on. And actually, I'm looking forward to see how this goes.
Sure.
But if everything checks out and we get some kind of systems, actually, I do plan into NGOX, whatever protocol is used to check for balances of exchanges, to implement this metric as part of the score we give to exchanges uh, in order to make sure it's here to stay. And if we do have this, it might help improve the trust people have into centralized exchanges and help bring things back to normal. I know there were a few other things that should have helped bring the price up, like the Bitcoin ETF everyone is talking about and these kind of things. I don't know if this is going to get delayed or scrapped following what's happening with FTX.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes forward, it's likely also to help bring higher price and better sentiment across how things are.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of unknowns, and there's still a lot of things that needs to be decided. Uh, I do think, however, that the price has been, I mean, feels low as it is right now. So eventually, so at some point in time, we probably see a higher price than it is today, but we definitely are also going to get back down again. I mean, volatility in Bitcoin has always been part of what Bitcoin is. Um, Even as the price is right now on dropping, I've seen back in 2012, after in 2011, we went very high at around like $30. But for the whole of 2012, the price was between $3 to $5. It was maybe the first uh, Bitcoin winter, as you call it. And look at where we are today and like panicking about $16,000 and stuff like this. And
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it feels like everyday Bitcoin.
Yeah, right. You're the epitome of the Bitcoin roller coaster guy that I have on my desk here, just going up and down. Well, and I know a lot of people are real hesitant to give kind of like a price target, you know, because like you might come across as too bearish or say something bad. The lowest I can see price going, and this is what I'm very open with my community about with respect to what the charts show, is like $4,000 per Bitcoin. So imagine another 75% drop. Not that I'm hoping for it, not that I have a high degree of confidence in it, but it's there. There's a thing at play. I won't bore you with the details. That's like it's a reality, and basically the what's interesting about it is there's this scenario that happened last pandemic, so 100 years ago. You had a big scary sell-off in all markets, crypto included, like within the commodities markets, the stock market. So this time around, there was a sell-off as well when COVID was announced, right, including crypto, and then we had a face melting bull run, and then there was a top, and then the entire market came all the way back to the lows of the initial pandemic fear. So imagine March 2020 on the charts, which is across the board for the S&P, for all global markets. Imagine everything going back to those lows. So that just would be very interesting to me. Regardless of all that, and I think you would agree, my only quote advice is just dollar cost average in through the bear market. Pray for lower, maybe you get lucky, who knows, but don't try to get too cute with it. But that actually, the chat wanted me to ask you, and I was curious too. Do you still dabble in crypto? Do you still buy and hold? Are you even allowed to? I don't know. It's not a gotcha. I don't know what the rules are with everything.
Yeah, well, I don't have any restriction on owning or holding any
Okay.
kind of crypto. But actually, I never been actively buying crypto.
Mm.
The only crypto I've had was from selling products using crypto or getting fees in crypto with MT GOX. So the maximum I hold, not directly, but through my companies, was about 80,000 Bitcoins, which actually all went away with the MT GOX bankruptcy.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, I lost everything, just like everyone actually, but I lost a lot more than that actually. uh, and as I'm today, I do own like maybe one Ethereum and a couple of other things because I need it to work on development, deploying contracts and stuff like this. But that's mostly work related,
Okay.
not really investment at all.
So no Bitcoin, but one Ethereum currently. That's funny.
We have a few like not cents or like not much, maybe a few hundred or $1,000 worth of bitcoins somewhere that either people sent me or I used for some tests
Oh, okay.
uh, buying a few years ago. Uh, so I'm not going to be fully without any single Bitcoin. I mean, I don't technically own a single Bitcoin anyway. It's fractions of Bitcoins, but uh, that's about it.
Okay. Okay. Well, with respect to ungoxed, I know a lot of the discussion in the community right now is about proof of reserves, right? This is like the big mantra for exchanges, proof of reserves. But there's that other half of the equation, just like a balance sheet has assets and liabilities. Proof of reserves really only gives you insight to assets. So perhaps ungox could help shed light on the liability side, and maybe that could be, a kind of a core
Definitely,
thing.
yeah, definitely something I plan to do, and I am also going to try to ask this kind of information from exchanges, but also companies running stable coins,
Yeah.
because a stable coin is only as stable as its liquidity or this basically backing is existing. I think that's one of the big things. Like everyone working, like we need to stop going to centralization. We need to go to DEX and so on. But if you use stablecoin on your DEX, and not all stablecoins are like this. You have things like, Terra and Luna that also turned out to be not so great anymore. But uh, basically, a stablecoin is only as stable as whatever behind it exists and allows to. So that's still a big risk for everyone that needs to be asserted and evaluated.
Okay. Any thoughts on Tether with respect to that? You're talking about stable coins, and it seems like every day Tether's in the news. Today it's a scam, tomorrow it's fine. Do you have any insight on that?
For no, not really. I mean, we know based on what's been happening in New York that Tether is backed by different kind of class of assets. Some are more risky than others, so we don't know everything about it at this point. But I do plan to ask, as part of NGOX, directly from Tether, but also from other companies running stablecoins, more information on their backing and generate a risk profile so you know which stablecoins are more risky than the other.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we want to use a stablecoin to trade, but if you're using a stablecoin to store money or assets or whatever, you probably want something that's more backed by actual liquid assets than loans or stuff like this.
Okay. I love it. All right. Well, Mark, I want to be conscious of your time. You've been with us over an hour. Is there anything else you want to leave us with? Anything you want to shill? Any projects you're supporting quietly? Anything like that right now?
So far, not much. Probably going to have some things in the future because I said I'm working on Ungox, which is very close to launch. I actually plan to launch when we would do the Mongox distribution, but FTX really pushed me to move the schedule a lot much faster forward.
Good.
So I trying to get as much information as I can, not only on FTX but also other exchanges, because I just don't want to release something that you cannot get anything useful of. But just a little bit more time to get all the information verified.
Sure. Okay. Well, look, it's been great chatting with you and conversating through Twitter and everything. And I appreciate, we'll have you on, in the future. And I appreciate you being here. And yeah, be safe. Okay.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Yep. Talk to you soon.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
I'm not trying to be perma bulljack, perma bearjack, just charts jack. Just whatever the charts are telling you, that is all I'm good for. That's all I'm here for. And nothing else. I'm not your hype man. I'm not your bear guy telling you to sell.